All right, so we're diving into IELTS prep today,
Yes, we are.
and we're going deep with this guide, 40th IELTS high score.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I think for anyone listening who is prepping for this test,
Absolutely.
it can be kind of overwhelming
Oh, yeah.
to know where to even start.
Definitely.
So we're going to go through some of the common mistakes that people make
Okay.
that are highlighted in this book,
Sounds good.
and hopefully give our listeners some tips on how to avoid those pitfalls.
All right. Let's do it.
So first up
Yeah.
is misunderstanding task requirements.
Oh, that's a big one.
I think sometimes it's easy to kind of skim over the instruction
Right.
and think, oh, yeah, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe there's more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah, I think people sometimes assume they know what the examiners are looking for,
Right.
but they might not.
Right.
And so, it's really important to understand exactly what is being asked of you.
So give us an example then of maybe like one particular task where it would be easy to misinterpret what you're actually supposed to be doing.
Sure. So in writing task 1, for instance,
Okay.
it's all about analyzing data.
Okay.
You might get a chart about, let's say, bicycle usage.
Okay.
And the trap is to start talking about, the benefits of cycling for the environment.
I see.
When really you should just be focused on the data trends.
So don't go off on a tangent.
Exactly. Stick to the data.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like you're given this chart
Yes.
and it's about how bicycle use has changed over time, let's say.
Right.
But you go off and start talking about the best bike gear to wear.
Yeah. Or, the health benefits of cycling.
Right. And that's not going to fly with the examiners.
Not at all.
Okay. So that's writing task 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about task 2?
So task 2 is often an essay.
Okay.
And you'll be given a prompt that you need to respond to.
Mm.
And it's really important to make sure you address every single point in that prompt.
Okay.
So, for instance, if it asks you to discuss both sides of an argument and give your opinion,
Right.
you need to make sure you do all of those things.
So don't leave anything out.
Exactly. Because if you do,
Yeah.
you'll lose marks.
Okay. Good tip.
So read that prompt carefully
Got it.
and make sure you give them exactly what they're asking for.
Okay. Mental note made. No more skimming.
Good.
All right. So moving on to another mistake I know I've made.
Okay.
Overusing memorized phrases.
Oh, yeah.
This essay will discuss the multifaceted issue of,
You sound like a robot.
I know.
Yeah, it's a common trap.
It's so tempting to memorize these like kind of pre-packaged phrases
Right.
because you think, oh, it's going to make me sound more sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually has the opposite effect.
Yeah, it sounds unnatural,
Right.
and examiners can spot that a mile away.
Okay, so we need to sound natural.
Absolutely.
But how do we do that without memorizing like a ton of stuff?
Well, instead of trying to memorize entire chunks of language, focus on learning versatile connectors.
Okay.
Like, on the contrary, or for instance.
Okay, so like individual words.
Yes, think of them as building blocks
Got it.
that you can use to create fluid sentences.
So can you give me an example of how you might use one of those connectors?
Sure, you could say, some argue that technology isolates people. On the contrary, it can connect individuals across the globe.
Okay, so you're using on the contrary to show the contrast between the two ideas.
Exactly.
It makes the sentence flow better.
And it sounds much more natural than using a memorized phrase.
Okay, so how do we make sure that using these connectors becomes second nature?
Practice, practice, practice.
Right.
The more you use them in different contexts,
Yeah.
the more naturally they'll come out during the test.
Got it. So it's all about practice.
Exactly.
Okay, next up is speaking too quickly or too slowly.
Oh, another classic mistake.
I think we've all been there.
Definitely.
Either we get nervous and start rushing through our words, or we're so worried about making a mistake that we end up speaking at a snail's pace.
It happens.
And it's painful for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's not engaging for the listener.
So what's the key to finding that perfect rhythm?
Well, it's all about balance.
Okay.
You want to speak at a pace that's clear and understandable,
Mm-hmm.
but also engaging and natural.
Right. So no speed talking or monologues allowed.
Exactly.
But how do we find that sweet spot, especially when we're under pressure?
Record yourself.
Oh, good idea.
Practice answering some of the speaking part 2 questions.
Okay.
And then listen back to the recording and be honest with yourself.
Right.
Are you speaking too quickly, too slowly? Are you pausing awkwardly?
I see. So you can identify those areas where you need to adjust.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about using pauses strategically?
Pauses can be very effective.
Yeah.
They can give you a moment to gather your thoughts.
Right.
And they can also help to emphasize certain points.
Okay. That makes sense.
So don't be afraid to use pauses,
Got it.
but use them strategically.
Strategically. Okay, good tip.
All right, let's move on to pronunciation.
Okay, so I know we don't have to sound like we have a British accent.
Right.
But how much does pronunciation actually matter?
It matters a lot.
Really?
Yeah, because even if you have perfect grammar and a wide vocabulary, if your pronunciation is unclear,
right,
your message might not get across.
Okay, so give me an example then.
Sure. Think about the words desert and dessert.
Oh, yeah.
They're spelled differently, but they sound very similar.
Right.
And if you mispronounce them, it could cause confusion.
Oh, I see.
So it's not about having a perfect accent.
Okay.
It's about making sure each word is clear and understandable.
So what are some good ways to improve our pronunciation?
Shadowing exercises are great.
Okay, and what's that?
So you find a recording of a native speaker,
Okay.
maybe a podcast or a TED Talk, and you listen and repeat after them in real time.
Okay, so you're basically mimicking their pronunciation.
Exactly. It helps you to train your mouth to make the correct sounds.
Okay, so it's like becoming a pronunciation ninja.
Exactly.
I like it.
It's a fun way to practice.
Okay, next up is mismanaging time,
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
which I think is probably the most common fear.
It's definitely a common problem.
Yeah, because you've got this clock ticking
Right.
and all these tasks to complete.
And it can be very stressful.
So any tips on how to avoid becoming a victim of the IELTS clock?
Time management is crucial, especially in the reading and writing sections.
Okay, so let's start with reading then.
Okay, so imagine you're in the exam hall.
Okay.
You've got your test booklet.
Yeah.
You open it up, and you see those 3 long reading passages.
I'm getting anxious already.
You need a plan.
Okay.
You can't just start reading blindly.
Right.
Because you'll probably run out of time.
So what's a good strategy then?
Aim to spend about 15 minutes on the first passage,
Okay.
20 minutes on the second, and 25 minutes on the third.
And why the different time allocation?
Because the passages get progressively harder.
Oh.
So you need to allocate more time to the later ones.
Okay, that makes sense.
And always make sure you leave a few minutes at the end
Yeah.
to check your answers.
Okay, so that's reading.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about writing? Because we have those 2 tasks.
Yes. So task 2 is worth more marks than task 1.
Okay.
So allocate your time accordingly.
So how much time for each task then?
40 minutes for task 2 and 20 minutes for task 1.
Okay, that seems reasonable.
And again, make sure you leave some time at the end to review.
Because I know I make silly mistakes sometimes when I'm rushing.
Everyone does.
Okay, speaking of mistakes,
Yeah.
let's talk about spelling.
Oh, spelling can be tricky.
I remember taking a practice test once.
Yeah.
And I lost points because I misspelled accommodation.
It happens.
It's such a simple word.
Right.
But under pressure, my brain just
Right.
froze.
Pressure can get to you.
So how can we avoid making those kinds of careless spelling mistakes?
Practice spelling common IELTS vocabulary.
Okay.
Words like environment and government.
Are often misspelled.
They are.
So familiarize yourself with those tricky ones.
Okay, so make a list of the words that you tend to misspell.
Exactly.
And practice, practice, practice.
And pay attention to plurals
Oh, yeah.
and proper nouns as well.
Okay, good point, because those are the ones that often trip me up.
They can be tricky.
Okay, spelling checked.
Good.
What's next?
Let's talk about using repetitive vocabulary.
Oh.
Using the same words over and over again
Uh-huh.
makes your language sound boring and repetitive.
Right, and it doesn't really show off your range of vocabulary.
Exactly.
So how do we spice things up a bit?
Synonyms are your best friend.
Okay, synonyms,
So instead of using the word important all the time,
which I am guilty of.
try using words like essential,
Okay.
vital,
Mm-hmm.
crucial,
Right.
or significant.
Okay, so it's like we're adding variety to our language.
Exactly.
But how do we remember all those synonyms?
A vocabulary journal.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So you can create a journal.
And write down synonyms for common IELTS themes.
Like what kind of things?
Things like environment, technology, education.
Okay.
And then try to consciously use those new words in your writing and speaking practice.
So it's like training your brain to think in synonyms.
Exactly.
Okay. Vocabulary journal. Got it.
Good.
What's next?
Let's tackle grammar and sentence structure.
Okay. Because I think a lot of people get intimidated by grammar,
Yeah, it can seem complicated.
but it doesn't have to be.
Not at all.
What's a good approach then to make sure that our grammar is on point?
Start with simple, well-structured sentences.
Okay.
And then gradually introduce more complex ones as you gain confidence.
So don't try to write these super long and convoluted sentences.
No, because that's when mistakes happen.
Right.
It's better to have a simple sentence that's grammatically correct
Okay.
than a complex sentence that's full of errors.
So can you give me an example then of a good, clear sentence?
Sure, you could say, many people believe that online education is effective because it is convenient. Okay, and that's a good example because it's easy to understand.
Right.
It's grammatically correct.
And it gets the point across.
Okay, so clarity is key.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about starting with simple sentences, but how do we add complexity without sacrificing clarity?
You can experiment with different sentence structures,
Okay.
like relative clauses.
What are those?
So these are clauses that start with words like which, that, or who.
Okay.
And they can add detail and sophistication to your writing.
So give me an example.
Instead of saying, the book was interesting,
Right.
you could say, the book, which I borrowed from the library, was interesting.
Okay, so you're adding extra information.
Yes,
But it's still a clear and concise sentence.
exactly.
Okay, so grammar doesn't have to be scary.
Not at all.
It's just about understanding the rules and practicing.
Exactly.
Okay, what else do we need to know?
Let's talk about accents.
Oh, okay.
The IELTS listening test includes a variety of accents.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, you might hear British, American, Australian, even Canadian accents.
Wow, so it's a real mix.
It is.
So how do we prepare for that?
Listen to a variety of English accents.
Okay.
You can listen to podcasts,
Yeah.
watch videos.
Oh.
There are lots of resources available online.
Right.
BBC, ABC Australia, and NPR are all good options.
Okay, so basically immerse yourself in different accents.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
All right. And finally, let's talk about practice.
Okay.
And specifically, practicing under exam conditions.
So it's not enough to just do practice tests.
No, you need to recreate the test day experience as closely as possible.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Find a quiet space,
Mm-hmm.
set a timer,
Yeah.
and pretend you're actually in the exam hall.
So like a dress rehearsal.
Exactly.
And why is that so important?
Because it helps you to get used to the pressure.
Right.
And it helps you to identify any areas where you might struggle.
Like time management, for example.
Exactly.
Okay, so practice under pressure. All right, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part,
We have.
but hopefully our listeners are feeling more confident
I hope so.
about tackling their IELTS preparation.
Absolutely. Remember, preparation is key.
Yes, it is.
And with the right mindset and the right strategies,
Yeah.
you can achieve your IELTS goals.
You've got this.
You got this. All right, welcome back.
Okay, so we talked about those pitfalls to avoid,
Right.
but now I want to get into some of those things that can boost our score.
Yeah, definitely. Let's dive into that.
So one thing that really stuck out to me in this guide, 40th IELTS High Score, is this emphasis on really understanding those scoring criteria.
Wow, that's huge.
Because it's one thing to know the material,
Right.
but it's another to know how you're being judged on it.
Yeah, you got to know the rules of the game
Exactly.
before you can play it.
So can you break down those criteria for us?
Sure. There are 4 main ones.
Okay.
Fluency and coherence,
Okay.
lexical resource,
Mhm.
grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation.
Okay, so 4 big ones.
Yeah, and each one plays a role in your overall score.
So let's start with fluency and coherence.
Okay.
What exactly does that mean in the context of, like, the speaking test?
So it's all about how smoothly and logically you can speak,
Okay.
connecting your ideas effectively.
It's like a conversation.
Exactly. Like you wouldn't jump from topic to topic randomly, would you?
No, definitely not.
So it's the same with the speaking test.
You need to have a flow,
Yes, a clear and easy to follow structure.
like telling a story.
Exactly.
If you keep jumping around,
Yeah.
your listener will be totally lost.
Exactly.
Okay, so fluency and coherence, check.
All right, what's next?
Lexical resource.
Ah, yes, vocabulary.
I used to think that bigger words were always better,
I think we all did.
but I've learned that that's not necessarily true.
Right, it's not about showing off.
It's not about using the biggest word you can find,
Exactly, it's about choosing the right word.
the right word for the job.
Yes, and using it correctly.
Because if you use a big word incorrectly,
Yeah.
it's going to be more obvious
Much more obvious.
than if you just use a simple word correctly.
Exactly.
Okay, so lexical resource. It's about accuracy and appropriateness.
I like that. Accuracy and appropriateness.
Okay, now what about grammatical range and accuracy?
Well, this one might seem obvious.
Yeah,
But there's more to it than just avoiding basic mistakes.
Okay, so we talked about relative clauses earlier.
Yes.
Would using those be a good way to show grammatical range?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Using a variety of grammatical structures, like relative clauses, shows that you have a good grasp of English grammar.
Okay, but accuracy is still key.
Of course, you don't want to make mistakes.
So don't sacrifice accuracy for the sake of complexity.
Exactly.
Okay, and then of course we have pronunciation.
Yes, we talked about that earlier.
And the key takeaway there was
Clarity.
clarity, right?
It's not about erasing your accent. It's about making sure your words are clear and understandable.
Okay, so those are the 4 main scoring criteria.
Yes,
Now, this guide also dives into different question types,
it does.
which I think is really helpful because it can be overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. There are so many different types of questions.
You've got multiple choice, sentence completion, matching headings, map labeling.
It's a lot to take in.
So how do we make sense of it all?
Well, the guide breaks it down nicely,
Okay.
and it explains that each question type requires a slightly different approach.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Sure. So in the listening section, you might need to identify keywords
Okay.
or predict answers or watch out for distractors.
What are distractors?
Those are the tricky options that are designed to throw you off.
Oh, I
So
see.
you need to be aware of those.
Okay, so it's like a game.
It is a game
You have to know the rules
and the strategies.
in order to win.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the scoring criteria. We've talked about different question types.
Right.
What else do we need to know?
Let's talk about active listening.
Okay, active listening.
This is crucial for both the listening and speaking sections.
Okay, so how do we become active listeners?
Well, in the listening section, it's all about focusing intensely,
Okay.
picking out key information, and anticipating what's coming next.
So you're not just passively listening,
No, you're actively engaging with the audio.
like a detective.
Exactly. You're trying to piece together the information.
And what about active listening in the speaking section?
So in the speaking section,
Yeah.
active listening means really listening to the examiner,
Okay.
responding thoughtfully to their questions, and showing that you're engaged in the conversation.
So no zoning out
No zoning out.
or going off on tangents.
Right. You want to stay focused.
Okay, I like that.
Active listening, it's a skill,
It is a skill.
and it's a skill that you can develop with practice.
Speaking of practice,
Yes.
this guide also talks about building confidence through practice.
It does, and it's so important.
It's not about cramming at the last minute,
No, it's about making IELTS prep a part of your routine.
like training for a marathon.
Exactly. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training for it.
No, you'd be in trouble.
You would.
So we need to approach IELTS prep the same way.
Consistent effort is key.
And speaking of support,
Yeah.
seeking feedback is also crucial
It's so valuable.
because it can help you to identify your strengths and weaknesses.
Right, and then you can focus your efforts accordingly.
So don't be afraid to ask for feedback.
From a teacher, a tutor, a friend.
Anyone who can give you an objective opinion.
Exactly.
Because sometimes we can't see our own mistakes.
That's true.
But sometimes it can be scary to ask for feedback
Why is that?
because we're afraid of criticism.
Right, but remember, feedback is about learning and improving.
Not about being perfect.
Exactly. It's an opportunity to grow.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it.
So embrace feedback.
Got it.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Because mistakes are proof that we're trying.
I like that mistakes are proof that we're trying.
Okay, so we've talked about active listening,
Yes.
building confidence through practice,
Mm-hmm.
seeking feedback.
Right.
Now, what about mindset?
Mindset is huge.
Because it's so easy to get overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah, the pressure can be intense.
So how do we stay positive?
Well, first of all, believe in yourself.
Okay.
You've put in the work. You know the material.
Yeah.
So trust yourself.
Okay, so believe in yourself
And focus on your strengths.
instead of dwelling on your weaknesses.
Exactly.
Okay, and what else?
Visualize success.
Okay, so imagine yourself acing the test.
Yes. See yourself walking out of the exam room feeling confident and proud.
Okay, so positive visualization.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about connecting with other test takers.
Oh, yeah, that's so important.
It's like having a support system.
Like community.
People who understand what you're going through
And you can share tips and strategies.
and encourage each other.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. We've covered so much good stuff today.
We have.
But before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
I want to highlight one more gem from this guide.
Okay, what is it?
Tailoring your preparation to your individual needs and goals.
Oh, that's so important.
Because we're all starting from different places.
Right, and we all have different strengths and weaknesses.
So one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to work for everyone.
Exactly.
So how do we figure out what we need to focus on?
Well, you can start by taking a practice test.
Okay.
And then analyze your results.
To see where you need to improve.
Exactly.
And then create a study plan.
A personalized study plan.
That targets your specific needs.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like creating a custom-made suit.
I love that analogy.
You wouldn't buy a suit off the rack.
No, you would get one tailored to your body.
And it's the same with IELTS prep.
You need a plan that fits you perfectly.
Okay, so no more generic study plans.
Ditch those generic plans.
We're taking control.
You are in control.
All right, I love it.
This is all about empowerment.
It is.
You have the power to shape your own success.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
But we need to take a little break. We'll be right back.
All right, so we're back, and I'm ready to take on the IELTS world.
That's the attitude.
We've uncovered so many IELTS secrets in this deep dive.
Yeah, this guide's got it all.
So as our listener is preparing for the test, what's the key takeaway for them?
I think the biggest thing is they have the power to succeed.
Okay, I like that.
It's all about mindset, strategies, and putting in the effort.
So we've gone through all these great tips from the guide.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
But I'm curious, from your own experience, is there anything you wish you knew before taking the IELTS?
You know, one thing that stands out for me is paraphrasing.
Paraphrasing, okay.
Yeah, especially for the writing and speaking sections.
Because you're not just repeating what you've read or heard.
Exactly. You need to show you can express those ideas in different ways.
So it's a way to really showcase those language skills. It is, and it can make a big difference in your score.
But how do we get better at paraphrasing?
Well, practice is key, of course.
Okay, practice.
But one thing that helped me was to think of it as a game.
Okay, a game.
Yeah, like take a sentence from a news article and try to rephrase it using different words and sentence structures.
That's like a puzzle.
Exactly. It's challenging, but it's also fun.
And it helps you to flex those language muscles.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, any final words of wisdom for our listener who's about to embark on this IELTS journey?
You know, preparation is key. We've said it before.
Yeah, it's all about preparation.
But don't let the pressure get to you.
Right.
Go into that test with confidence, stay focused, and you'll do great.
That's great advice.
Remember, you've got this.
And if you hit a roadblock or have a question, don't forget, there's a whole community of IELTS test takers out there.
Absolutely. Connect with other people who are going through the same thing.
You're not alone on this journey.
We're all in this together.
And remember, conquering the IELTS is more than just a score.
It's about opening doors to new opportunities.
It's about achieving your dreams.
It is, so keep your goals in mind.
This has been such an inspiring deep dive.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, best of luck on your IELTS adventure.
You're going to do great.
We'll catch you next time.